We're good, Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Welcome to the regular briefing of the Forsyth County Commissioners. Today's briefing is going to be for the 3rd of February, which is 11 days before Valentine's Day. That's one way I like to look at it. We'll turn the meeting over to Dudley Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so we have a fairly brief agenda to get through today. We're still, some of that's a result of just the holidays, but so we have that, and then just a couple things to mention. They're not really discussion items, but just some informational items. So anyway, I'll dive into the items for consideration for the February 3rd of 2022 meeting. You've obviously got the minutes for the meeting we just had. Those will be getting out to you once they're prepared. Item 2 is an amendment to the FY21-22 budget ordinance. It appropriates some additional share of the warrant program funds, and Sherry Cook should be on the line. Sherry, are you there?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This item is a budget item to appropriate additional funding for our Piedmont Natural Gas Share the Warmth Service Funds. Originally, our state estimates were $16,431.79 less than our actual allocation that was given on December 30th of $25,161.79. The Share the Warmth program is 100% contributed from monies from Piedmont Natural Gas customers and employees, as well as some corporation donations. These allocations are based on the number of Piedmont Natural Gas residential customers in each county. The households that are eligible to receive these funds do not have to be Piedmont Natural Gas customers, but must be a residential utility customer, experience a heating-related crisis, and have countable income at or below 150% of the current poverty income level. The maximum benefit per year per household is $200. This is considered 100% state funding with no county match. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Agenda item 3 is a resolution approving county policies to aid in administering federal coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds from the American Rescue Plan Act. And Lee Plunkett he's obviously our treasurer and works in the finance department, but he's also had this role as really being sort of the primary committee leader around the ARPA funds and the CARES Act funds. And so while he's got lots of folks that have helped him, and I'm sure he'll talk about that, he really has been sort of taking the lead on managing through the complexity of the ARPA funds and the CARES Act funds before that. So Lee, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dudley. I know we've gone through this quite a few times, but first of all, I just want to thank you for your patience with us as we developed these policies for your adoption. The additional time was extremely helpful as we're all learning on the fly here what was needed from a compliance standpoint. So we really appreciate that. So as you know, these policies create the proper compliance environment. So that helps us reduce the risk of noncompliance and hopefully avoid recoupment of funds. And so the compliance requirements are required by the grant award terms and conditions, but also U.S. Treasury requires several of these policies to be adopted, particularly the project review and subaward policy. So as you know, and as we've said, the scope of compliance is quite large and complicated. We've relied heavily on the School of Government, and there's been many employees across the county that have helped out tremendously, as Dudley mentioned. So I do want to extend my gratitude to Kimberly Bussey from Budget, who's kind of spearheaded the effort to keep us moving along. But there's also a lot of contributions from others, our CFO, Terry Goodman, County Attorney Gordon Watkins, our ARPA Administrator, Aisha Carter, Shannon Hutchins, our HR Director, Adam Fernbach from Finance, and Penny Eford, our Internal Auditor, all had a large hand in making this get to where we are. And so just as a reminder, that the final rule was just published January 6th, and the effective date is April 1st, 2022. But they did provide a little leeway that says if you want to go ahead and implement the final rule, go for it. So we are trying to do that where possible. The policies that were included with the agenda item in your packet today are in draft form. The reason being is we are just finalizing some of the roles and responsibilities, so fairly insignificant things. If there's any material changes for next week, we will definitely let you know what those are and keep you updated. And also, as we're learning as we go, if there's any additional guidance that's issued from the Treasury or from the School of Government, we may need to modify the policies, but I feel like the group of policies that we have this week is extremely solid and will help us move forward. So the policies that are up for adoption today, or for February 3rd meeting, are the 8 you see there, the allowable cost policy, the civil rights non-discrimination policy, property management policy, premium pay policy, project review and subaward policy, cash management investment policy, conflicts of interest and gifts policy, and then finally the federal procurement policy. So I want to take a few minutes to briefly describe each policy that's there before you now. This slide and the following hopefully will just serve as a quick reference guide. I don't want to read these to you, but they will serve as a quick reference guide in case you need that in the future. So the allowable cost policy, this one creates some guide rails to help us ensure that the county and the subrecipients are spending the federal dollars within the parameters that set forth in uniform guidance. I know you've heard us say that, talk about that guidance before. And this guidance identifies around 55 categories of cost items that we've got to screen all these expenditures through. And so this is a little bit different. So you've probably heard eligibility talked a lot about, and so that deals more with, is the project eligible under ARPA rules? This is the specific expenditures within an approved project allowable under federal guidelines. So that's a bit of a difference. In the extreme example that maybe help us understand is, say a subrecipient is approved to provide tutoring program for students. An allowable cost would be materials like books that would help the subrecipient implement their program. An unallowable cost would be supplies for an end-of-year staff party. So there'd be a difference there of what's allowable and what's unallowable. The next policy is the civil rights and non-discrimination policy. Obviously felt fairly self-explanatory here. We're saying the county will not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, disability, age, or sex in accordance with the Civil Rights Act and other federal laws and regulations. And it calls us to monitor subrecipients for that as well. The next policy is property management policy. This policy really deals when there are assets being purchased with federal dollars. So normally when that happens, the federal agency is vested in the asset. And so if the purpose of the asset changes or the ownership needs to be changed, then we've got to work with the federal agency to figure out how to make them whole. Based off the understanding of the final rule right now, I think we may avoid this for the most part, but it's something that we just needed in place in case that changed. The premium pay policy is the next policy. This essentially puts to paper what we already had in place and what we were already doing, so we were good there. You as a board had already approved all the amounts of premium pay and the eligibility requirements that were in line with the final rule as well. And so this just really lays out what the retention requirements are, any calculations that had to be done, and who was going to do all that. So it's really just a formality in place, but it'll also be helpful for the next round of premium pay. The next policy is the project review and subaward policy. So this one was the main driver of the extra time that we needed to bring these to you. So again, we very much appreciate your patience. This policy sets out the methods and parameters for several primary functions for handling the federal funding. So one, we've got to determine the eligibility of the proposed project. So, we've talked about that a lot, especially through the application process that we had created. It also deals with how do we assess the level of risk with each project and potential subrecipients. How recommendations are made, how you as the board will approve projects, and then guide rails for determining the structure of any subawards that you may award to applicants. And then how do we monitor all those awards? So it's an extremely important policy, and I think it's in solid shape, and one that we'll need in place before any subawards are made to applicants. So this is good to get it going now. The next policy is the cash management and investment policy. This is essentially just a beefed up version of the investment policy you as the board had already adopted many, many years ago. It doesn't materially change any investment processes or the way we manage cash. Those are always done with best practices, but it essentially puts what we already do in writing. And then if the auditors have any questions on, why did you handle cash in this particular way, we point to them in the policy to show them why. And then the final two policies are the conflict of interest and gifts policy. So this policy incorporates the federal guidance and state law around conflicts of interest and gifts. And obviously the purpose is to prohibit the self-benefiting of any official employee of the county from a contract or a subaward to an outside entity. So where it gets more restrictive than state law is that the conflicts can arise not only for the official, the employee, but their immediate family members as well, and then any organizations that might employ them. It also incorporates some new state law around conflicts that are specific for elected officials. And I think next week there'll be a little bit more information to help you understand that if you need it. And then the final policy before you today is the federal procurement policy. So this policy lays out specific federal requirements for procurement. So it's different in many ways than the state procurement law. So this policy is separate, hopefully to help those that need to use it or to manage projects both from the county and the subrecipient level. And so this will ensure that all employees and departments managing projects are aware of, we may have to do the procurement side, getting bids, doing construction, that type of thing, in a different way than we normally are required to under state law. So I know that was a lot, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
On the subject of money and policies, are we planning to publish, and if so, when, a complete list of all the ARCA nonprofits that received funds from the county for their organizations?
Yeah, so those will be, the approval of these policies will really let us move into those final approvals. Those approvals will be in front of you on February the 3rd, and then they'll be reviewed through that cycle. And so once this board takes action, we'll be able to post that.
Should be interesting.
Mm-hmm. And then we will talk, I'll talk a little bit more at the end of this briefing about just sort of next steps around round 2.
Okay.
And that was my question, Mr. Chairman. When we open up the process again for new applicants, should we get to that? Okay.
Yep, I'll get to it. All right. Any other questions? All right. Very good. Item 4 is a resolution authorizing execution of an amendment between Forsyth County and the Resource Company Incorporated to provide temporary employment services for COVID-19 response at the Forsyth County Department of Public Health. Adam Pendlebury with Public Health is probably on the line. Adam, are you there?
Hey, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you. Just speak loudly, please.
Sure thing. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The item before you is to increase a contract with the Resource Company for temporary employee services to $60,000. These temp employees have been inputting vaccine records into the North Carolina vaccine management system, and we need to increase this contract to finish up the project. This contract is paid for with funds made available to Forsyth County from NCDHHS for COVID response. I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Questions, comments? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Adam. Agenda item 5 is a resolution authorizing accepting a quitclaim deed in order to correct record ownership of certain property at Smith Reynolds Airport. Kirby Robinson will review this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Board. Appreciate you all having me this afternoon, and I hope it's okay. I'm here in person. As background on this item, the Airport Department has been working with the County Attorney's Office to update its property inventory map. And so the property inventory map, otherwise known as Schedule A, is required by the FAA and is necessary to continue receiving grant funding for future and current airport projects. So Schedule A essentially shows all of the real property that makes up the airport And when we send that to the FAA, we're certifying that we actually own that property. So it's my understanding that while we have updated Schedule A in the past, the FAA has recently started requiring title searches as part of the certification process. So it's a more in-depth look at the ownership record for the airport, which is a complicated ownership record. We're lucky in the sense that we have a great attorney's office. Our assistant county attorney, Fred Johnson, has been working hard on this. And when he was searching the airport's property records, it really became clear to him that there was a gap in the title. So even though we knew we owned the airport, what was recorded didn't necessarily show that, or we couldn't find the record. So due to that gap, again, we were not able to show title to one of the airport's parcels. So from a historical perspective, various parcels were transferred from the Winston-Salem Foundation to the county between 1935 and 1992, and those parcels now make up the Smith-Reynolds Airport. So our theory as to why this gap exists is that one of the deeds, probably around 1970, was either not recorded or otherwise misrecorded. Additionally, the legal descriptions on older deeds can be difficult to map out as they're not specific like we would see in a deed today. So really to remedy this situation, staff worked with the Winston-Salem Foundation to address the ownership issue, and they have kindly agreed to convey their interest, if any, in the property in question. So essentially, if the board desires to move forward with this action, we will work with the Winston-Salem Foundation to record a quitclaim deed that conveys the foundation's interest, if any, to the county in approximately 459 acres of real property located at Smith-Reynolds Airport. So this action really should resolve the title issue and allow the airport to move forward with submitting an updated Schedule A to the FAA. Happy to answer any questions the board has.
You said it should and wouldn't. You didn't say it will resolve.
I think that's our sincere hope, and our attorney's office, I think, is pretty confident in that.
So are you saying that back in 1970, the Winston-Salem Foundation owned 439 acres of the current airport and it did not get transferred? It was in some kind of, maybe a gift, and then they had it and then they transferred it? Yeah,
so I think the Wachovia was acting as trustee for the foundation, and between 1930 and 1990, they made several conveyances to the county, and there was one part where we sold a piece and then leased it back from them, and then they gifted it to us. So it's a complicated record. So it wasn't 492 acres all at one time. It was in several different instances over time, from what we can tell. Again, that's sort of complicated to go back and research. My understanding of Fred's title search is that there were several of those transactions, and there's one of them that looks like it's missing from the record. And the legal descriptions of those things sometimes are hard to discern because streets may have moved that may have been referenced in the legal description, or they say take a ride at Mr. Johnson's stump or something like that. But so from what we can tell, there's a certain amount of acreage that's probably not been on the record. And so this essentially cleans that up. The foundation says, and they have records showing that over time, they believe they have already completed this. And so when they sent it to their council, they were fine essentially quit claiming their interest if they still had any in that larger parcel.
Okay. Yeah, essentially a cleanup, and it's been necessary. We've been working on this for, I've been here 15 or 16, and almost from day one, it was like this thing to get resolved. So anyway, good job. That's very good. All right. Item 6 is a resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor collecting the amount of $249.95. This is the North Carolina vehicle system. Item 7 is a larger one, and I asked John to show up if he would. It is a resolution approving refunds by the tax assessor collecting the amount of $216,431.42, and thought he might want to make a comment about that one. So.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Mr. Manager is correct. These are the results of some recent Board of Equalization review hearings. It represents about 125 different accounts. As you know, and the public knows, 2021 was a reappraisal year for us. It's not uncommon for us to be handling some larger valued commercial properties at this time of, well, at what was at the end of 21 in our Board of Equalization review. So these refunds are resulting from that. If you have any questions specifically, I'd be more than happy to try to answer those for you if I can.
Maybe one quick question. You said there were 125 different amounts that totaled up to the 216. Am I right about that?
Yes, sir.
And how many of those would you, just roughly, would you classify as commercial, And what percent would you classify as residential?
Thank you for your question. I looked at the top 45 that looked to me on the surface to be commercial-oriented properties. We ran about a 12% decrease on the values from what we originally valued at the beginning of 21 to what these appeal results yielded.
And the balance of from 45 to 125 were residential?
Or very small commercial.
Right, that's what I felt like, okay.
Additional questions or comments? Okay.
If I could have just one more second.
You can have all the seconds you want.
Well, I appreciate to be out of order a little bit, but some of you may have been getting some phone calls about people receiving delinquent notices in the mail. We just mailed out about 28,000 of those, so you may get a phone call or two. But those are situations where folks paid their taxes late. Remember that first day late on January 6th, it carries a 2% penalty. 3/4% interest is added every month thereafter. While there is some concern at times about maybe the status of the Postal Service and that sort of thing, I'm happy to tell you that actually the number of notices we sent out this year is actually lower than our standard amount. So it's about 1,400 notices less. So we've had better compliance with people paying on time, but still people do get caught in the situation where they are late and have to pay those fees. But we're happy to address any of those questions. If any of you receive questions, please pass them my way, and we'll try to do what we can to answer those.
It's amazing how some people know how to make money. Yeah. Any further questions? Thank you, John.
Item 8's the last, and it's the tax assessor collected refund under $100. And that is it. So we have a fairly manageable short agenda for the formal meeting on February 3rd. The only other 3 items I had just real quickly is in front of you. There are options for some potential changes to how we handle some business around meeting times. I mentioned it to everybody. After a couple of commissioners mentioned it to me. And so there's a few other ideas that were kind of thrown out at me. As I understand it, we'll just pick that up later, and I'll just kind of wait for y'all to tell me when we need to calendar that as a discussion item. Winter work session is February the 24th. And so be thinking about things that you want to try to dive into a little bit deeper. As a staff level, we met, and we had the schools data that Carrie Crutchfield put together for us about a year ago. So we were working with Carrie to update that data. That was really all about trying to develop sort of a school funding dashboard that would help us navigate the school budget. We got tons of data and had a problem trying to figure out, we're still working on what the important data that ought to be on the dashboard is, because there was just so much of that. And so we're working through that, but we basically have kind of a schools component tentatively on the work session agenda. The community survey is coming. We're going to get that back in time. So our goal is to have that to you at least a couple weeks in advance of that winter work session so you can see the data, and then we can have kind of a strategic conversation about what we think that data says. But I'm glad to say that's back in, and we're wrapping that up, and we'll get that to you. Thought it might be important to have a short session there around just a capital project update. We've got a lot of capital projects underway. Neither I nor y'all have really seen sort of all that together in one format, and I think it'll be helpful just to see that so that you get a handle on things that we're working on from the capital perspective, and maybe identify anything that you think we need to pay attention to that we're not paying attention to.
Since you're on the subject, what's the status of the courthouse?
They are topping off the steel as we speak, and so we're still, I think, on schedule, and 2023 is going to be a big year for getting in the courthouse. So,
any ideas on Ted Kaplan's idea that we turn the old courthouse into a grocery store?
No, I don't have any ideas about that. So, but it is for sale to the highest bidder if they want to come to us. And I've sent a couple of people over Kirby's way when they've expressed that interest. So you too can own the old
Lowe's
courthouse.
Foods is now ready to serve you downtown.
That's right. That's right. So ARPA round 2. So if you think about how the February 24th is going to come in, we're going to have the ARPA round 1 done. There'll be some lingering things as we sort through the round one things. I know that, but we will have. I think we will have just finished round two, and we'll be prepared to really have a conversation about what you want to focus on in round two. We've seen a lot, have some experience from that. There's going to be substantial dollars there for round two, and so strategically how we enter that will be a really important conversation. And I thought that might be a good winter work session discussion item. Or if we don't feel like we have time to do that, maybe we do that in one of these special sessions that we're talking about at some point in time. But it's on the radar screen right now. And then finally, we always do that mid-year budget update and HR update and sort of the financial mid-year review. We'll do that. That's probably going to take a little less time because, frankly, it's not as there's not a lot of changes there, so we should be in pretty good shape with that. So be thinking about things that if you've got something you want to talk about winter work session, talk to me, Chantel, Damon, Gordon, Terry, anybody, Kyle. We'll be happy to sort of navigate that because we will be finalizing that agenda over the next couple of meetings. And then finally, the legislative agenda. We're entering short session, I believe, in May, and then of course going to the national. Federal side is in front of us as well, but we hope to be as strategic as we were last year going into the state budget. While I think there will be, I think there will be dollars there and opportunities at the state budget. I think it'll be a little tighter than it was and a little more competitive, but we just need to be strategic about that, and we'll work with Ashley Perkinson on that to try to get that done. So that is all I have, unless there's any questions.
Hard to believe we won't be back here until February, right?
Chairman, I do have a question for Dudley, if you don't mind,
Yes,
please.
go right ahead.
So, Dudley, for the citizen survey, I wanted to know if one of the questions was asked about the meeting schedule for the commissioners. Was that addressed in the questionnaire?
Does anybody remember? I'm not sure there were.
I can't remember either. I can look and find
Okay.
out for you for sure.
Yes, if you don't mind, that would be helpful for me. Thank you.
There were questions around where you get information from us on. So, I mean, there's things that I think got to it, got to what you're interested in. So,
Any comments before
Hello, Dudley, this is Tawana Roebuck from ESR. Could we have documentation on what the vote was today so that we can turn it in with our proposal for CSBG, please?
Our clerk, Ashley, it just nodded her head, so she'll be able to get that to you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And again, I thank you, everyone.
Tawana held on a long time.
Hey, I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
Point of privilege, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
As a member of the trustee board of the library, we wanted to know when we could come before the commissioners for a briefing on a potential name change for the Central Library. What would be the best date to come forward in a briefing? Would it be next Thursday or the Thursday after that, or what would you recommend, Mr. Manager?
I would probably defer to the board. I mean, next week is a second briefing, so it's one of those meetings where we have a lot of discussion on it. So I think we got 4 presentations next week from different agencies, but the agenda's really short, so it would be a good time. So I think any second briefing, if the chair of the trustees wants to let us know, we'll try to get it scheduled. That'd be good.
Any further comments before we adjourn? I want to start with Mrs. Wisenhunt. Do you have any comments from December into January before we leave and start practicing for February?
I can't think of any.
Okay. Fleming Elamine?
Just my #1 fan on Mayfair Drive. Hey, Mama.
What did you say, Fleming?
His number
I
one
repeat for
fan, his mother.
colleague, to my #1 fan on Mayfair Drive. Hey, Mama.
That's good. Commissioner Kaplan? Oh, my gosh. He won't even, you got me all confused here now, and we got a second. Richard, do you have anything to say? I mean, Ted's already tried to cut you off there.
I was going to second his motion.
Tanya, you're all right? All in favor of Ted Kaplan's motion to adjourn? Aye. We're adjourned.